What's up, everybody? Welcome back to. I think my mic is not on again. I can't. I keep doing this. I'll just. I think I keep. This is like the second time I've done this. Sorry, everybody.
I'm hearing it. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. I think I think we're good. Okay, I should have checked this before the show. Okay, there's always a mic problem here that I have. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam Palmer. I am your host here on the Hobby Hotline, episode 299, getting close to 300. Pretty crazy that we have been doing this weekly and that we are already almost at 300. My two co-hosts today, we have Horatio and Dr. James Beckett. Sorry, Horatio. We'll start with you. How's your week going?
It's a good week. The weather's sort of beginning to change, so I've been spending more time outside. I'm in the midst of Little League, so I coach a team. I got a game later today, so I'm looking forward to doing that later today.
And Dr. Beckett, how about yourself? How's your week going?
Great week. I went to the Mavs game last night, so the Mavs are moving on.
That's exciting. Yep, definitely. NBA playoffs in full force. We have my Bruins, unfortunately, they're going to another Game 7 after be down 3-1. It's just a nightmare scenario 2 years in a row, but that's beside the point here. Big week for Topps at the industry conference. They announced a plethora of different stories, different things that they're going to be doing in the next couple years. We definitely want to hear from you, the chat, as well. What was your basically favorite story that you had this week? Because there was, we could have probably done 2 hours just on Topps things that they came out with. We're going to try and make sure we mix in other companies, but with Topps doing their industry conference with all these announcements, it's going to be pretty tough. But we want to hear from you guys in the chat. Let us know what was your favorite story this week. The first one we actually are going to kick off was some news that came out probably, I don't know, like 6 months ago when Michael Rubin was on the Bill Simmons podcast and had announced that they were going to be hiring an independent auditor to come in and make sure that there wasn't any funny business going on with breaking and all of these kind of things. So Horatio, I'll kick it to you first. I'm thinking you probably read this story. This was one of the stories you brought up. What were your kind of initial thoughts on what Topps did here and, how much of effect it has really on sort of what's going on?
My initial impression is that it's a good idea. It's a good idea to kind of bring in an outside, corporation like KPMG to come in and kind of audit your processes and all that. But the actual statement that Fanatics put out, that KPMG put out, it was kind of vague. It wasn't very specific. And you got to take it at face value, right? It's kind of Fanatics kind of doing, I feel like they might very well be, processing the cards, randomly and distributing them randomly. I kind of wonder, if there's no way that Fanatics doesn't know where those boxes are going. Like, how can you be shipping out a product and not know exactly where they're going? Regardless of what your industry is, right? Like you got to have an idea of where they're going. So that's the first thing I'm gonna say about that. Then the second thing is that Michael Rubin has a long-standing relationship with KPMG. His one of the co-founders of KPMG Consulting was on the board of his company that he sold to eBay about 20 years ago. So Rubin, obviously he's a great businessman. He's got connections all over the business world. But KPMG and him are, there's a relationship there that extends 20 years out. And, so I just say, take it for what it's worth. I think it's a good idea. I think that there needs to be a little bit more separation between the two.
Yeah, I agree there. And Dr. Beckett, how about you? What were your kind of initial thoughts when you heard about the story and sort of reading up on what has kind of come about from the audit itself?
Well, audit seems like it's a pass-fail thing, but I don't think this really was. Obviously, they're going to get a pass, as Horatio is pointing out, but not for favoritism, but I'm sure they were granted access to what and they were looking at all the processes and procedures and trying to figure out if there was room for improvement or safeguards that could be taken that maybe weren't being taken, more cameras. I think if KPMG probably did a full report of here's what we find, here are your vulnerabilities. But the main thing that Rubin is looking at is what are their perceptions of the public. And so this is to try to defeat that notion that his company or any of the companies are loading up boxes and know exactly where the big hits are. And that's fundamental to their business. So they're not messing around with this. KPMG is a serious player. But Ratio, a lot of times different companies have a preferred relationship with one of the big accounting firms, one of the big consulting firms. So I don't take issue with that. But I'm hoping Panini, Upper Deck, Leaf, any card company has safeguards in place, because if they do know where the big hits, what boxes the big hits are in, that's a huge problem.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's okay for Topps and Panini to know, I guess, where like you were saying, where the big hits are. It's just a matter of like it has to be random. Like there can't be any manipulation of moving whichever box is going where, or giving the breaker a heads up that this box is coming to them with this certain cards in it. I mean, if I'm going to be honest here, I think Panini has had more of an issue, in my opinion, over the past few years with boxes seeming to be, sent to certain breakers, and then they're the ones pulling all the cards, which I also think that that's a little bit of an overreaction, because there are just so many cards that people would consider like big cards nowadays. And I think, yes, when you have, like, for example, I'll just say it, Blez breaks, I believe, or the brothers Blez, I forget exactly their name, but they pulled like 3 or 4 of like the top Nebula 1-of-1 rookies this week. It doesn't add up, in my opinion. And I know that it can be random, and I'm sure that some of this stuff is random, but it's like, I was never really suspecting that with Topps stuff. It was more with Panini, and I'm glad that Topps is kind of taking a proactive step here to, I guess, show that nothing is going on. I guess, like you said, the report, it's more of a headline. I think if you look into the report, there wasn't as much substance to it. It pretty much was like, yeah, nothing's going on. It's like, okay, well, yeah, we kind of figured that Topps doing an audit on themselves. They're not going to, I guess they wouldn't snitch on themselves technically.
Adam,
yeah,
what could any company do to prove to you that they're above board? It sounds like both of you guys sound really suspicious, and I'm just trying to figure out what could Fanatics or Panini or Upper Deck or Leaf or any company do to satisfy you that it's random.
Well, I guess I was never necessarily, it was definitely more for me, at least, a Panini kind of thing, where Topps, I never really thought anything like weird was going on necessarily. I would like Panini to do something similar to this. I don't think that they will, because just based on their track record of kind of sweeping a lot of controversies they've had under the rug, in terms of, whatever it could be, whether it's, a certain breaker pulls like 4 or 5 number one cards in a product within a week or whatever. But I would, to answer your question, basically, it would have to be something similar to this. And it would have to be, in my opinion, a company that isn't affiliated with the owner of the other company, I suppose, like, if that makes sense. But yeah, as for me, Horatio, I guess for you, Dr. Beck brings up a good question for you. What do you think about that?
The report was very vague. There were no details. It didn't say which products they were inspecting or which products they were auditing. It didn't, it kind of gave, these very big business words. I don't have the report in front of me, and it was a short report. It basically repeated itself over the course of 2.5 pages. So I think it's a good idea, Dr. Becca. I think, like I said, I think it's a step forward. I think it's something that kind of gains credibility, gives Topps Fanatics a little bit more credibility, but the report itself was sort of flat. I took issue with a spokesman who said that, the allegations that we have loaded boxes are absurd and, absolutely ridiculous, and this report proves it. I'm like, that to me seems more of a PR thing. So I think something with more details, I think something with more transparency would be what I would want. I just feel like the industry as a whole lacks transparency, and they put a link to the reports. I'm like, great, I'm going to read this whole thing, and it's like 3 pages of not much.
Guys, in statistics, the null hypothesis is that there's no effect, and that it's random. And there is not evidence enough when they look at it to see that there is evidence that it is not random. And so the report would be boring because they didn't have a finding of fault. Now, again, and most of these big accounting firms have an audit group, and then some of them even split off the consulting group to keep them separate. To me, I see this more as a consultation than an audit. The audit is kind of what the public wants to hear about, but I bet they rolled up their sleeves and tried to figure out where are the vulnerabilities. How could people be thinking this? And if it's just because the randomness of certain large breakers getting multiple big hits, that's to be expected. It's to be expected.
Right. Yeah. And like, I think that is also a good point. Like you said, like the report is going to be kind of there. It might be nothing. Like there wasn't really anything super salacious in there because they found that there wasn't anything salacious going on. So I do want to give a couple shout outs to people in the chat here. We got Duke TTT saying first time watcher. Thank you for coming in here. Just came over from 1 million Cubs, which a couple weeks ago, he had that first pitch that he threw out and the Cubs gave him the commemorative card. That was super cool. And then he came on the show. Shout out to 1 million Cubs. And then we got Topps did something with the redemptions over the past 10 years or extension. Yeah, definitely. That's I think that's definitely a good thing. We'd love to see that. We've got Ray from Philly saying, hey guys, I think we're pretty much, I don't know. Did you guys have anything else on this specific topic? I think we're going to move on to the Topps Chrome announcement that I think is pretty big. And then I'm going to be going through these comments and trying to figure out. So, did you guys have any other thoughts on this before we move on to the next topic here?
Democrats and Republicans. There's Democrats that say one thing, and no matter what the Republicans say, and vice versa. And so there's just people that think it's not random and people that think it is. And to me, the benefit audit, again, I'm not saying there couldn't be isolated things because somebody could, even the players have sticky fingers. But as a pattern in practice, it's in the best interest of these companies not to do that. And if it really were a conspiracy, there's no way the secret could be kept.
Right. True. It's like the moon landing, for example. It's like people that believe the moon landing was, faked. You'd have to have millions of scientists all agree and all never be, no one has ever cracked ever. It's kind of similar, maybe not similar, but either way. So we're going to move on to, I would say, I don't know. I mean, I'll ask you guys this. I think one of the biggest pieces of news that came out from the industry conference this past week from Topps was that Topps Chrome Basketball, we have had some basketball products with Topps in the past. I think it was Topps Finest last year with a bunch of retired players that all had autographs. But this is, apparently we're getting a rookie for Victor Wembanyama. Wembanyama obviously has that exclusive with Topps here. And we're going to be getting a full set, I'll start with you, Dr. Beckett. Topps Chrome coming back. Pretty exciting news here. What were your kind of thoughts on, the first initial cards that were coming out?
I want more cards. I want more good cards. So, I mean, basically the world doesn't need another restaurant, but there's always room for another good restaurant. That we don't need another sports card product of any kind, unless it's adding something of interest. And I think this is. I'm happy about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Topps Chrome is one of the more iconic brands, and I'm glad that they're kind of rolling out some of the cards with using Topps Chrome. I mean, it's kind of like the opposite. If this was Panini, it would be like if they were rolling out Prism cards, this would be a big first card. So Horatio, kind of same question to you. What were your initial thoughts when you saw some of the reports about, this Topps Chrome card? And then also, I guess we can kind of expand it to, it looks like they're coming out with, it was like 5 or 6 other basketball products as well.
Yeah, those other basketball. The biggest thing was, what do the cards look like? And I think overwhelmingly everyone agreed that the cards, based on that Wembanyama, like it looks very nice. It's got the autograph, it's got the chrome, design and everything. So that was the main thing. I think also the biggest things are that there's Steph Curry, LeBron autos in there as well. It's a good thing for the businesses, right? I think it's a good thing to keep the hobby also excited. It's a new product. It'll draw people into stores. And the LCSs can kind of, run their discounts or whatever, give away packs to kids, things like that. I'm wondering what the impact of it being non-licensed, right? Unlicensed. I personally prefer action shots like on the cards, especially with basketball. Wembanyama with the ball on his shoulder, I think that's a great pose. And I'm wondering how the other athletes are going to come out like, because I personally just prefer, seeing some action shots from some of these players. I'm not a big fan of unlicensed baseball. I just don't like the way it looks, the way they kind of block out the logos, the design of the team. But it's interesting how Wembanyama is, right? Like you could see that it's a Spurs jersey. You could see everything. You just don't see the logo. And so I'm very curious about how the other cards will look.
Horatio,
right. Yeah.
the only thing people see in that design is the autograph.
Yeah.
So with the autograph there, that's the primary attribute, whether it's got team logos or anything. It's Victor. It's a image of Victor of at least, head and shoulders and his autograph. And people are going to chase that. So, we can quibble about what the base cards are going to look like, but the premium, the case hit cards are going to be, sure, it'd be great if it was fully licensed, but it's not.
Right. Yeah. And also this just a reminder, everybody in the chat, make sure you're commenting some of your favorite news from this past week. We're still, trying to get more feedback from the chat here. So make sure you let us know sort of what you saw this week that you really liked, and we can try and cover that here on the show. I think this year Topps has done a phenomenal job. Whoever Topps' designer is, or Fanatics Topps, basically the same thing. Whoever their designer is that is like designing the concepts for these cards, I think that they've done a phenomenal job with like choosing images or designing the cards in a way that you don't really notice. Like, sure, if this was a frontal image and you could see him from the front, like you would see that the logo on his jersey probably wasn't there. But the image that they chose, like, I think it's a good point for you, Horatio, too. Like when you said you'd like to see what some of the other cards look like. I do agree with that. Like, how are they going to? Are they all is like, I think Topps Chrome is going to be an important product for this initial releases, but I think I do get a little bit nervous with what they're going to do with some of the other players. I don't think they're all going to be these types of images. Like, I'm sure it's not going to be like, them looking over their shoulder, all the players, so like, I'm sure it's probably the rookies, if I had to guess, or maybe even it could be just Wembanyama, to be honest, because Wembanyama, we obviously know, has that exclusive with Topps. So maybe potentially they got him in for another photo shoot where some of the other rookies, they are having to kind of piece together some of the images there and figure out exactly what they're going to do. And with those autographs, that also is a big deal, So Dr. Beckett, I'll ask you this one other question too. It's like, do you think that the returning of a brand like this is going to be, how important do you think the return of Topps Chrome basketball is going to be? Because we've seen over the past, like when they had those licenses, and even, Steph Curry's year, unfortunately, I don't believe was licensed, or it was like half licensed, because that's why a lot of the rookie cards are pretty much just like almost similar images here, where it's like just the upper half of their face. Like, so Steph Curry, James Harden, Blake Griffin from that 2009 draft. So for you, Dr. Beckett, like, how important do you think the return of Topps Chrome basketball is to the landscape for a company like Fanatics?
Well, Adam, it's not the return of Topps Chrome. It's the early return, the earlier return than we were thinking. Right. And I don't think anybody's against that. If you don't like it, you can pass on it. But, you've mentioned the design element, and that's really important, probably to everybody. But the other aspect of product development is just the configuration of the set and the attributes and all that. And, you're don't think very high on Panini, but most of the decision makers, the product development team, were the senior guys at Panini that came over to Topps. And so they're giving their imprint, their advice and counsel and strategies for how to make a pleasing set. That's what those guys do. And so, yeah, Topps Chrome was coming. It just is coming earlier than we thought. And the tricky thing, I think, is that for some of these LCSs, they really need to take this, because this is, if they take it, then when the fully licensed Topps Chrome comes out in 2025 or 2026, whenever that the license completely changes hands, they're going to want to be in good with Fanatics that, hey, we carry your full line of products.
Right. Horatio, kind of same question to you. Like, do you think that this, like, I don't know, I guess in terms of popularity, it's because it has the Wemben, I think I got correct in the chat. It's Wembenyama, and I've been saying Yana. Wembenyama. I got corrected in the chat there. But so where do you think that this product maybe falls in the, I don't know, history of cards? Like when we look back 10 years from now, like, do you think that this is going to be one where people are like, do you think people are going to be hoarding boxes of this one, from just the fact that there could be a Wembenyama rookie in there? Or do you think it's really going to take, once the fully licensed product, that's what's really going to help Topps and Fanatics here?
I think, and what the comments Dr. Beckett all said, like, I think the fact that it is going to get the license in a year or two, whenever, these things kind of are changing, helps this release. Because same situation with like a Leaf, maybe if I can make that comparison, we know Leaf isn't going to get the license in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And that might be keeping the cost of the cards down. I take a look at the players that they've had at Leaf. I mean, they've had iconic players. They have a Joe Montana autograph, right? You can get it for about 60, 50% of what it would cost an autograph on a licensed card on the secondary market. It's just the way it is. People preferred their licensed products. This is different though, because it's Wembanyama. It's his rookie season. It's an iconic product that's coming back. So it is interesting. It might hold more of its value than a normal, quote unquote, unlicensed product would, because it is getting its license in 2 years, and it just might kind of be absorbed. We'll say obviously it's unlicensed, but 10 years down the line, right? What do you prefer? Do you prefer this Wembanyama rookie card, or do you prefer the first official release of Topps Chrome licensed in 2 years?
Right.
And people tend to like the earlier stuff, and place a higher value on that.
I like your reasoning on that. I think there are rules like 60%. I don't. Let's just take your 60% number, that if it's unlicensed, it goes for 60%. The issue here is that with Wembanyama, 60% of a big number. So in Leaf, a lot of these things are untested people, and then you look back over in a retrospective. But this is going to be a great card. Will it be as great as a card that comes out that's fully licensed? Probably not. But then there's design elements and historic significance of the card. So, but we would expect a not fully licensed card, even an autograph card, to be worth less than a fully licensed card. But even there can be exceptions based on when something comes out and what it looks like. This is a nice looking card. It's going to go for big bucks.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. And like I said, I think that they did do a good job with image selection but I do wonder if it's because, they have that exclusive with him, that they can get better images for him versus like, for a LeBron or as Curry, where I think LeBron is exclusive with Topps now, but I don't think that they're necessarily getting him in for a photo shoot. Like, I don't know, maybe now that LeBron's out of the playoffs, maybe potentially they can get him in for a photo shoot, but I don't think during the season, especially with, that Lakers team that they had, they basically all played for most of the season. Like, I think, for example, like, Anthony Davis, he played the most amount of games in his whole entire career, and a lot of those players were playing the full season. I guess it's unfortunate, LeBron's not going to be moving on. I think it's good to see some of the younger teams get their chances, I suppose. I mean, obviously as a Celtics fan, I'm obviously rooting for them. But with the NBA playoffs, I don't know. I will see what happens with this type of product. I'm just kind of looking at the chat again here. Saw that Rex commented about the NBA license in October 2025 and the NFL in 2026. I think those dates were announced, or I saw them on Twitter. I don't know if Topps necessarily announced them fully, what were going to be the official dates here. So for the next 2 years, I guess, Dr. Beckett, I'll ask you this question, kind of on unlicensed stuff in general. Do you think that because Fanatics is going to be getting these licenses and they come out with more NFL and NBA products, do you think they're going to be as exciting? I mean, they probably hopefully have some autographs in there, but where is your kind of thought process, kind of viewing throughout the years of these shifts, these major shifts within the hobby of the excitement level, I guess, on some of these products as we go into when Topps finally gets those licenses?
Adam, you said hopefully put autographs in there, and nothing could be farther from the truth. Autographs are driving these products, and the proliferation of autographs of 21-year-olds and 22-year-olds. I don't know how old CJ Stroud is, but Fanatics plays for keeps. They're predatory. They're grabbed up the autograph rights of these young players. And, when you look back in 10 years, unless it's something like LeBron, who didn't do autographs for a long time because of a contractual relationship with Upper Deck. Otherwise, LeBron he'd have 20 years worth of autographs.
Right.
Michael Jordan has had his autographs restricted. Okay. Wembanyama, I don't see any. Again, the proliferation of autographs is going to have an impact on our industry, with people paying huge bucks for first and second year or pre-rookie, all these different autograph cards, not just the base cards, but the autograph cards. And the Fanatics needs to be careful. Because if autographs become too easy, it drives down the price.
Yeah, that's I do agree with that. And actually, Horatio, I'll ask you this question, similar to what Dr. Beck was just talking about with the autographs. Do you think it's going to be in these first couple years of products? Do you think it's going to be a lot of like Legends autographs, or do you think they're going to, they're going to have those Curry and LeBron autos, but like, do you think that they're going to have the same amount, or do you think that they're really going to try and restrict the amount of like Curry and LeBron autographs in the product versus, having Legends that they can probably pay a lot less to get those autographs?
Yeah, we can speculate on that. I think that's a good move. I mean, I know that, and I think we're gonna talk about that later. One of the baseball legends has come back on a product, and it's sort of a thing that you could do to kind of restrict some of the autographs. But I don't know. Listen. Like Dr. Beckett said, it's the autographs driving the products. It's the autographs that are driving the breakers. They want to hit the jackpot, and you don't do that so much with legends. You do that with, I mean, you could. I mean, depending who the legend is, right? If you're talking about Jordan autographs, it's a completely different thing. But they want the rookies. They want each year's rookie class, and that's what's driving the prices. And so, I mean, if you're a Fanatics, you got to think about what it is that you are kind of, what do you want to do? Like, how much do you want to restrict it? How popular do you want to make the product? How much demand do you want to create to where, the cost doesn't add up, right? I think they have an opportunity to make the product great. I think if they really want to hit it out of the ballpark, they'd make maybe 100, 200 on-card autos, right? They wouldn't make these all sticker autos. I think that's just my suggestion. They have an opportunity here to do it a little bit differently, where the iconic cards from like the early 2000s, 2010, 2009, a lot of those have sticker autos. It'd be great to have some on-card autos as well, and to kind of distinguish them from the sticker autos. To me, there's added value to autographs on the card as opposed to on a sticker.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Looking at some of the comments here, we got Drew, one of our co-hosts here, said, I think you'll see a lot of Dirk, Bird, Wade, and others for this year, in addition to Garland, KD, Curry, Wembanyama, yeah, LeBron, of course. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I guess the images, I'll be interested to see how they choose them, and I'm hoping that we get more images before the product actually comes out, just to see sort of, how they're going to treat some of these cards. And I guess we'll keep kind of moving along here with the Topps news. Like I said, the Topps industry conference kind of really dominated, I think, the news cycle this week. And I think one thing that maybe some people were expecting and some people were a little bit surprised by, I think that they announced this a couple months ago, but it's going to be that Pete Rose is going to have autographs in this year's Bowman baseball. And he's going to have a first Bowman. They announced that they're going to start doing retroactive first Bowmans, I think a couple years ago, in these products. I don't know. I'm kind of interested from your guys' perspective. Like, the Pete Rose card is very interesting to me, just because, like, I thought that he, like, I don't know how they're getting a Pete Rose card with like the Reds logo, like, because I thought he, maybe he's not technically banned from, because he's banned from baseball. We know that, but I don't know. Maybe he's not banned from the MLB Players Association potentially. So, Dr. Beckett, I'll ask you first this question. What do you think of this Pete Rose card coming back in, sort of, I guess, being back in Topps? Like, do you see this changing anything in terms of his MLB status, or is this just something that Topps was able to kind of finagle and put together and figure out?
I don't think finagle is the right word. I think I hope that Fanatics and Topps were completely above board with the Players Association, which Pete is not part of anymore, and Major League Baseball, of which he is. They're kind of loosening up some of the restrictions, but most people know that Pete Rose is the most prolific autograph signer.
Yes.
He passed up Bob Feller. So he's the most autographs living. We think well over 1 million autographs that he's signed. So, but to put him on a 1 of 1 or a 1 of 10 or a 1 of 100 with a cool design, but I don't believe there's any way Topps snuck this by anybody. And
yeah, right. That's not what I meant. But yeah. Horatio, kind of same question. What are your kind of initial thoughts on Pete Rose being back in baseball products?
I mean, I think it's interesting. I think it speaks to like the loosening of certain things, certain restrictions, right? Like, to me, I think about Reggie Bush getting his Heisman back.
Yes.
The kind of thing that the NCAA has had to adapt to a changing legal landscape, right? It's all been legal, and so they were kind of forced to give Bush Reggie his Heisman back. Same thing here. I'm kind of curious what would drive that. Like Dr. Beckett said, I don't. There's no way that they would have put this without Topps, without the MLBPA's permission or MLB's permission. So it just speaks to like sort of like the loosening of things, and it speaks to, interestingly, I don't know, are people softening to Pete Rose? It doesn't. I mean, the facts are out there. He bet on baseball. He bet on his own team while he was a player. I don't think that he bet against his team, but it's still, the rules are the rules, the laws are, the bylaws are the bylaws. So it's interesting to me what his future is. That's a beautiful card, by the way, the 1 of 5,
Yes.
with him with his red uniform, and you kind of see what I'm talking about. Like that card is, to me, I mean, visually much more appealing than the Wembanyama card. Not that the Wembanyama card is an ugly card by any means, but these cards are so much nicer just because they have that logo. And so it's kind of cool to see him back in the fold. And it's a way for his autograph value to be distinguished. It's definitely it's through baseball cards, right? It's not through the, I don't know, tens of thousands of baseballs that he signs in Las Vegas, where he's sitting out there outside of a store.
Right. Yeah.
And he pretty much inscribes whatever anybody wants. Which good for him,
Guys, if we just keep remembering that Michael Rubin's mantra is 10x. If you put Pete Rose in your product, do you have a chance to gain new customers and new hobbyists? I think so. For every one person that's going to be turned off, there's going to be 10 that say it's about time, or I'm excited to get an official, Pete Rose Topps card that's signed with a modern design. Those are cool looking cards. So I think the move is to help expand the market, and it probably does.
Yeah. Right, I agree with that. We had a funny comment here. They should do a Pete Rose auto parallel to 100,000. Yeah, that's I think he's widely known as one of the most, I don't know how to say it. He autographs a lot of stuff, and he'll autograph anything you ask him to. So I mean that would be pretty funny. We've got, let's see. We've got the Pete Interpreter dual autograph. The Ohtani who got in trouble a couple weeks ago with his interpreter. I think that would be kind of a funny autograph. I think I saw some autographs or some, because people put out custom cards and like memes and stuff on like Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that. And I saw that those were pretty funny. Pete Rose looks like he was at a Minnesota show and he charged $4.99 for signing his rookie card. And then we got Drew again, hoping for some sneaky inscriptions. That would be kind of funny. I mean, I'm sure Pete Rose, like you said, it's one of his first Topps cards in quite some time. I would be, maybe there'll be some like bet on something or something like that. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Drew's saying, yep, in the chat here. I think it's a cool idea. I think, Dr. Becker, like you said, the 10Xing of the hobby, I think the plan itself is less to look at the broader scope of the hobby and trying to almost key in on specific audiences that have not had cards in general. So, you had like the Alabama football set. I think that was a good one. I don't think they ever came out with, I know I thought of that they were going to come out with like a Duke basketball set, but like the Bowman sets in general, I think are one way to key in on those the college audiences who maybe, Luka Garza, for example, he was the number one he won National Player of the Year, and he is playing now for I believe Minnesota, but for a while there he was kind of jumping around in the G League and didn't really do much. So like, having a Luka Garza card on an Iowa card, I'm sure that probably would have, people within Iowa would have really liked getting a card like that. And, they're doing, just in general, I think the college cards are one way that they're really going to be able to kind of expand that. And I believe I don't know if either of you guys saw this, that Reggie Bush was also getting a first Bowman in Bowman football. It could have been a Photoshop. I haven't really seen any other people talking about it. But I did see somebody posted a Reggie Bush first Bowman football card. Like I said, it could have been Photoshopped. I mean, nowadays people are getting pretty good at Photoshopping these types of cards. So it could have just been a Photoshop. I didn't see anybody else talking about that, but the news over this past couple weeks of Reggie Bush getting his Heisman back, I think that's great. I think that's really cool for him and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Someone said, how about I bet on baseball inscription in Bowman? Yeah, I have a feeling like we probably won't see that autograph, if I'm going to be honest. But yeah, so we're going to kind of move on to one topic that someone suggested at the top of the show in the chat here. Again, it is very Topps heavy this week, unfortunately. Maybe unfortunately for some, fortunately for some people, I don't really know. But I'll show you guys here. We had the redemptions for Topps was announced that they had brought in the last year that they had brought the redemptions from 70,000 all the way down to 10,000, and that they're going to be extending the redemptions from what was, I believe, a 2 or 3 year window where the redemptions expired to a 10-year expiration, and then the year they're going back to 2021 for basically retroactively making some of these expired redemptions unexpired now. And then over year, the amount of redemption cards going into products are down substantially, which that's been one thing that Michael Rubin has said in a lot of interviews, that he's trying to get rid of redemptions, which I think that's a phenomenal idea. I mean, I would like to see the expiration date be completely eliminated, just because you never know what could happen. But obviously, maybe not obviously, they have to put some sort of parameters on these redemptions. Horatio, I'll start with you. What were your initial thoughts when you saw some of the redemption stuff that was kind of being changed this past week?
I think it's a positive step. I think that it's Topps. We complain a lot about these companies not listening to the consumers. Redemptions was a thorn in consumer side for years with Panini. Where it'd take years to even get it, or the redemption card that they had, then they got like a lesser players card, so this is big. I think also the fact that they've extended it is that in the event that they don't have, a certain player's whatever, a relic, an autograph, that they're going to work to get it, right? That they'll be able to fulfill the redemption. So I didn't know when they released the statement that they actually had brought that number down to 10,000. I think that's a positive step. I think that kudos to Topps for that. Topps fanatics, and that's all I can say about that.
Yeah. Dr. Beckett, same kind of question for you. What do you think of this initial piece of news that Topps is two kind of big pieces of news, that they reduced the amount of redemptions and that they're extending the expiration date?
They're reducing headaches for themselves. It's headaches for us, but it's a headache for them to deal with a redemption, or to deal with somebody that's a month past the expiration of the redemption. So they're avoiding all that. They're being gratuitous. I think most redemptions are going to come, pretty soon, and to have less redeemable cards is they're moving in the right direction. But I hope, well, here's the unintended consequence. I hope this doesn't mean that more of the product will not be opened, that they can leave it sealed for 9 years. That I think too much unopened product is not healthy. I think the product needs to be opened when it's issued. I want 90% of it to be opened at least.
Yeah, I think ultimately you kind of hope for that type of stuff. Like because you don't want. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily that big of a problem, but like you could see that like in general, like if product isn't opened and then all of a sudden, whatever, 4 or 5 years after the product comes out that it's being opened, like it floods the market with more cards. You got to hope that, like you said, I hope that this is a step for Fanatics to just get rid of redemptions. That's what Michael Rubin has been saying. I think that's once they can figure out how to do that, that's going to be big. I just think, in general, I just don't. I think redemptions really water down a product and make it a lot worse, in my opinion. Like, and also the one thing that I wish that was a thing with redemptions was like, I just wish there was more availability of that type of information. Like for them to say, in whatever product, X amount of players are going to be a redemption, and to give more of an update on when those players are going to sign. A couple years ago, Joe Burrow was a redemption in, I think it was Contenders football, because he sent in his redemption cards like a week past the deadline. So it's like, but they didn't come out with really a statement. Panini didn't, I guess, with saying, hey, if you get a redemption, make sure you send it in, which, I mean, some people, you get a redemption, obviously you're sending it in, but they didn't really make any type of statement that was like, hey, he's going to be a redemption, but if you send it in right away, all of his autographs are live. I just think in general, when you have those redemptions in there, it makes the product, unfortunately, a lot worse, unfortunately. Let's see. We got
Adam, you're still being too tough on the companies. I mean, basically, I'm opening up a pack and I get a base card, a base card, a base card, a base card, and a routine insert, another base card. That's one pack. The next pack open is base card, base card, base card, base card, insert, redemption card. I'd rather have the redemption than a base card of the redemption means it's something at least good enough that I'm going to send in. So I'm not complaining. I just want, and we don't want to eliminate them. We want to greatly reduce them. And that's what Michael Rubin really wants to greatly reduce them, because they're a hassle. They're a headache. Mm-hmm. But I'd rather have a redemption card than a common.
Right. Yeah, I that is true, because then you are getting an autograph in most cases, because if you got that redemption, you are going to be getting the autograph. I think we had a good comment here actually from the 70s Card Show. Redemptions should be for experiences, game tickets, meet and greets, throwing out the first pitch, make memories, not useless Sharpie spew. I think that's what that word is. But a lot of people in the chat are agreeing with that comment, and I think that would be really cool. I mean, obviously, I think one of the big redemptions that was this year was the 1-of-1 patch cards, like the debut patch cards, which, like, those ones I'm okay with redemptions, because you would imagine all those cards are made and they want those cards to be protected as much as possible. I think that's probably where I'm okay with redemptions being in there, because if you put that card in a regular pack, you have to figure out how to make all the rest of the packs, not as the weighing of them. Sometimes that can be an issue. But overall, I think that is one of the good. Those are some of the good uses for redemptions in general. So Horatio, I'll kick to you too here. Do you have any thoughts on kind of what they could do to replace redemptions, or like what were your thoughts on John's comment here about like making them experiences versus just an autograph?
Yeah, I think that's a thinking outside the box. I think that's great. I'd be interesting to see how that would be implemented. Right, we could go a number of different directions with that. I think they took a step forward also with the Topps Series 1, where they had redemption cards for memorabilia, right? Which I thought was an interesting thing. I haven't seen too many of those hits though. That's the thing. I'm wondering, like, what are the? I know there've been a couple come out, and I can't think of them off the top of my head. But I think that's also a great deal. I mean, I think that like game used stuff is so prominent now, right? Like uniforms, even just baseballs, whatever bases. I think that'd be super cool to have as a redemption, and that's something that you'd have to wait on an athlete on, right? Like you could just kind of collect that from the game itself, and and send it over whenever you have. So the redemption cards to me, anytime I got them, to be quite honest, and I maybe hit two when I opened packs, I would sell the redemption cards because I was pretty, maybe for a little bit less than what the actual card would have gotten me, because I was just scared of going through that whole process of turning it into the company, waiting months or whatever, not knowing what might happen. I'd rather sell it off to somebody else to kind of deal with the companies. But it is obviously what Dr. Beckett said, it is more valuable than having a base card.
Okay, but what about Panini points? Would you rather have Panini points or a redemption card? With a redemption card,
Well, yeah,
exactly
redemption
what you
for
get.
sure.
With Panini points, you've got some limited choices on some of the points levels of getting anything very decent. So, because otherwise, everything we're saying would apply to Panini points. That if you accumulate enough points, you could get an experience, you could get a whatever. But nobody likes Panini points either.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a catch-22 because if it's not the card that's in the product that they're saying is in the product, people are just going to be angry, which I think in general, people, are angry online, no matter if, they could pull a 1 of 1. I'm sure someone's going to complain about the centering of it or something, like there's just, you're never going to make someone happy 100% of the time. And I think Greg actually had a good comment here. They'll never be able to completely get rid of redemptions because they're dealing with so many athletes. I think that's true, I guess, but I mean, Horatio, for you, like, I mean, in my opinion, I think that they just need to figure it out. Like it's really, and I know that's not good. That's probably not good advice for them necessarily. It's probably not what they're looking for specifically, but like, do you think that they could ever just get rid of redemptions altogether other than, I think John had a good comment about what they could do with redemptions, but like the autographs that are specifically supposed to be in products, do you think that there's a way that they could ever really get rid of them? Or is it just something that we're going to have to probably have just in general?
I think that comment's pretty accurate. I mean, they sign these athletes to their contracts, and the athletes are sort of committed to a certain number of autographs for certain cards, for certain releases, and they can't get them all at once, right? So they might, the athletes might be available at the beginning of the season. During the season, it might be really difficult, and then so you might catch them at some points. Who knows, right? But they do that. So the demand or the amount of supply that you're putting out there. You won't ever have it all at once, right? Just because of the time crunch that these athletes are under. So I don't think the redemptions are always going to be gone, right? But I think limiting them is the way to go, right? And it like Dr. Beckett said, it makes it more manageable for them, creates fewer headaches for the consumer, creates fewer headaches for them. But just because of the nature of what you're dealing with autographs, you're dealing with the athlete having to sit down, you're dealing with thousands of autographs. You can't have all your product at once for the entire year, right? Like you need to get that stuff over time. And sometimes you just need that more time. And that's what the redemption card kind of does. It buys them time to fulfill the product.
Yeah, Mad City Brew had a good comment here. Get rid of redemptions and just bring back the gum. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that idea. I think that I'm sure. I'm wondering if
Come on,
the gum from like the what?
You want a piece of gum instead of a redemption card in the pack?
I mean, I'm being a little facetious here. It's just I think like the gum from the 70s. I'm wondering, 50 years from now, if they put gum into the cards now, like what if it would still be like that rock hard piece of like brick that they put in there, or if they would, I don't know how they would be able to do it. But so yeah, Dr. Beckett, I actually have a question for you here. When they started kind of putting redemptions into products. I don't know if necessarily you remember specifically when they started doing this, but like before, what did they have? What were they doing before redemptions for autographs? Like, was it not as prevalent, or is this kind of a newer concept, the redemptions? Like when do you remember any of that type of stuff? Like when redemptions kind of started coming out and what they did, sort of maybe before redemptions were a thing, if that actually was happening.
Well, 56 Topps had contest cards. you'd fill them out, you'd make your prediction of the game, and if you won something, and it was probably a way for Topps back in 1956 to get names and addresses of kids and customers. But again, it's never been, it's a hassle. It's a hassle for people to send in. So in the 30s, it was a redemption set. You get a complete set, you send it in, you get a baseball glove or a bat or something. And now in every one of those instances, you would have preferred to have kept the 30s set than gotten the rinky-dink bat that you got or the glove. But so there's always been this back and forth with people putting out cards, but just to have a separate card that's a redemption card. Again, they went too far. I think that they're reining it back in, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Greg had a good comment here. Let me just find it. Oh, back in the 90s when you got the redemptions, it meant usually something good and they were more rare. So, I guess, Dr. Beck, I'll ask you this question again. For autographs within products, when they started including those autographs in products, how do you know maybe how they got around redemptions? Like, did they just have less autographs? Did they have better contact with the players? Like, do you think that the redemptions added or took away from the product when they kind of were first starting to make them, I guess?
Baseball Card Hall of Fame, Ray from Philly. If you go on YouTube and vote, one of the things you can vote on that I did vote for is the Reggie Jackson, I think it's 1990 Upper Deck autograph to 2,500 baseball heroes or whatever it is. Reggie did those in advance. Reggie could have signed them all, so there wasn't a redemption. I think that's the first signed in pack autograph card. But for a current player and on the scale they were doing, they just can't get them all. If somebody's late, again, they have to pack it out before, and then so if it's not ready when you're packing out or where you're going to press, with press time is scheduled. And so redemption cards, like I said, nobody is upset about getting a redemption card of a great card, right. And like Horatio, they could sell it, but they're going to they'll get some good money for it. But if it's a redemption card for somebody that's a second stringer, utility infielder with no following, then that's just a headache. But it's a headache for the card companies too.
Right.
Just happens.
We got Mike said he tried to trade a Yin Yang Ruth card for a ice cream sandwich and they turned him down. Said I missed the redemption by a year.
That's actually Younglings. It's Younglings.
Oh, yes.
Youngling. And so he's kind of joking and kind of telling the truth. He missed it by about 100 years. I think it's from the 20s. Almost 100. I think it's 90 something.
Yeah. Let's see.
And Adam, the other point was, with accounting firms and with generally accepted accounting processes, you have to have an expiration date. Otherwise, it's like an unlimited liability that you have to carry on your books forever. So you're going to be able to write it off after 10 years. And so otherwise it's just out there forever. And that's a headache.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, I guess that does make sense because, in my eyes, I didn't really, I guess I never thought of it that way. I always was like, why do they just not do an expiration date? But I guess that does make sense. I guess I don't know if either of you guys know, but do you know what if you got a redemption that was expired, but they had the card, this is one of the questions that I've always had with redemptions. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know if either of you guys know this, but when redemptions do expire and they still have the cards, what do they do with the cards? Do they just keep them in the warehouse or are they putting them in other packs? Once the redemption date expired, maybe this is something that they've changed recently, but what did they do before? Do either of you guys know potentially what they were doing with live autographs that had expired redemptions?
Same thing. I mean, I don't imagine anybody's destroying cards, But
Right.
if I had an expired redemption and it was expired by a year, let's say, I'd bring it to the National. And I go up to the company's booth and say, I don't know if you still have these. I know I'm late, but I got this. And, I opened a box that had been sealed till this time. And can you help me out? And if they still had it, I don't think they're going to say, get out of here, kid. They're going to tell you, they're going to say, you know what, those are, we don't have those left anymore. But they may say you're just too late, or they may say, hey, we've got something that's a substitute. In fact, that's what Panini has done, I think, is that when they have extra stuff that didn't get, they've used it to redeem when they don't have the thing that you're supposed to get because they didn't get the autographs. They have a pool of stuff that didn't get redeemed, like you said, that's expired, but they have the autograph card, and they can offer that as a consolation prize if you didn't get your the thing where the guy didn't return his autographs.
Mm-hmm.
They can't comply with that, but they can give you something out of their vault. I'm guessing stuff like that would happen. It has value, guys. You wouldn't throw it in the trash.
Right. Yeah, I guess that does make sense. Yeah, like you said, they're probably not getting rid of the cards. Like, it kind of is almost like the Panini points, where it's like when you have a certain amount of the points or what a card would be worth necessarily, like they can probably figure out how much they can give you in value back. And I mean, yeah, like you said, bringing those redemption cards to National and figuring out, like, that's a great place. Or I mean, any of the big card shows, we just had I believe the Toronto Sports Card Expo was this past week. That was a big one, kind of in tandem. I actually thought that the Topps conference was in Toronto because I saw people at the Toronto Blue Jays game. So I was like, oh, that's cool. But no, it was in Atlanta. So, we had two kind of big things going on at the same time. Let's see.
Guys, you should get Greg Cohn on, because I mean he's got firsthand knowledge of some of these things. He's making comments. He's in the chat, but his experience would be interesting.
Yeah, right. So I guess the last quick topic, because we're kind of going to wrap things up here, will be that I thought, or sorry, did either of you guys have any last minute comments on the redemption? I mean, actually, we're kind of coming up close to the hour here, so here's what we'll do. Did you guys have any other last minute comments, and then we'll quickly go over the other one, and then we'll wrap things up for the show today?
No.
Thank you, Adam, for keeping it moving.
So one thing that, look, this is maybe a more personal topic for me that I really like this concept, and why I'm bringing it up on the show really quickly, is Topps actually did something this past week where they had a Mets card with the hot dog. So I think the Mets had a $1 hot dog night, and they sold 44,269 hot dogs at the field. And then Topps did a kind of a cool promotion here where they did dollar cards to commemorate them. And they said that either they would sell out, either it would be the 24 hours, or they would get up to the amount of one over the amount of hot dogs that were sold. It is kind of wacky. I mean, we also saw the beekeeper card this past week that I thought was pretty cool. The beekeeper, there was a over in Arizona, there was like a I don't know what you would call a nest, hive of bees that were somehow got created in the Arizona stadium, and he took all the bees down. And then he signed it. He has a bunch of Topps cards that he signed. Like I said, they're kind of wacky. Not really super serious about these, but Dr. Beckett, I'll kind of kick it to you. What are your thoughts on these kind of wonky, weird cards that Topps came out with this week?
Altogether, they're toward the 10X approach of getting people that are not thinking about baseball, basketball, football. They're looking for interesting stories, popular culture connections. So terrific. It's terrific. Now, I don't think they're good investments, but the mainstream collector doesn't care. But keep doing stuff like that, Topps. That's great.
Definitely. And actually, interesting comment here about if the hot dog cards were autographed, there were actually some Keith Hernandez autographs that were mixed into that hot dog card. Keith Hernandez being, a classic legend for the Mets there. So, Horatio, same question to you. What did you think of these cards that came out this week?
It's fun. You got to capitalize on the moments. The beekeeper, Matt Hilton, he had his moment throughout the first pitch. Went on a number of podcasts, went on a number of shows. So they're a number of things. They're capitalizing on the moment. They're capitalizing on this little pop culture in sports. And it's a good move. It keeps things light. The cards aren't too expensive. Obviously, for $1 a card, low risk there. His
Right.
cards are $8.95. Matt Hilton's, pest control. He's pest control, not a beekeeper necessarily. So I think it's great. I think it brings a little, it makes the hobby light again, right? Like it's not so
Yeah.
serious anymore, right? We're just putting people's cards, and they've done this before. Topps now has done that before with a number of different people that have had an impact on whatever sport or collecting, and I think it's just a good move.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and I actually did see some people, commenting that they thought the autographs or the cards were cool. Like usually, I feel like when things like this happen, people just kind of roll their eyes and like, oh, great, another weird thing that Topps is doing. But I actually saw some good feedback, which is nowadays when you're going on social media, it can be kind of surprising. I think we are actually at the end of our show here. We are at the top of the hour. I will, Dr. Beckett, I'll start with you. Do you have any closing words for the show? Anything you're looking to promote? Anything along those lines?
Not a promoter, but just thank you, Adam, and thank you, Horatio.
Thank you,
And
Dr.
thank
Beckett.
you, viewers and listeners.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Ratio, same kind of question to you. What you got going on? Anything you're looking to promote or any last words here for the show?
Yeah, two things. Thanks to all the guys commenting. Appreciate you joining us, listening to us talk. Really appreciate that as always. Second thing is in 2 weeks, Eric Hecker, he does, he's a kind of the director of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. He does a lot of things. He gives away a ton of cards. In 2 weeks, he's got Ripping for the Cure. And I'm hoping to have him on next week as like a guest host for a couple minutes just to talk about what he does. But he's one of the good guys in the hobby. And so in 2 weeks, if you can do anything to help Eric Hecker out, go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, love that. Like I said, want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat here. If you are on social media, this is what I try and say at the end of most of the episodes is like, if you are on social media and you see people with questions, just, answer the questions nicely. Everybody is at a point at some point in sports cards where they were just like you, where they didn't really know that much. So just being kind to people, that's what I always, try and preach here at the end of these shows. I want to thank everybody for watching, everybody for commenting. Make sure to share the video wherever you're watching it, and make sure you come back here to Bench Clear Media next Saturday because our episode 300 is next week, which is pretty crazy. I made my debut on episode 100. So that was pretty cool. And episode 300 is coming up next week here on Bench Clear Media. Thank you guys all for watching, commenting, all that type of stuff. I will see you in another couple weeks, but come back here next week for episode 300.